The issue of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which allows for electronic transmission of election results, is yet to abate. While appearing before the House of Representatives on July 16, Umar Adambata, Executive Vice Chairman of the NCC, who was represented by Ubale Maska, Executive Commissioner Technical Services, said electoral coverage analysis conducted in 2018 by the Commission showed that about 50% of Nigerian polling units had 3G and 2G network services, while 49% had 2G network and below. Maska has also said that only 3G is needed to transmit results electronically. In the report of the technical committee, as reported by the cable, Inec was said to have made available coordinates of 118,302 polling units out of 119,973, and its deliberations sought, most importantly, 100% constant availability of network service during the period of the election. According to the report on the option of traditional data communication service, the MNOs confirmed that they have delivered similar services using this option to the MDAs in the recent past. What is really happening? This is really interesting.
It is, Rufai, and confusing at the same time. And you wonder in whose interest is this decision being taken? For the politicians, for the electoral body, or for the electorate, or for everyone? And I don't think we've seen the last of this or heard the last of this. If not careful, perhaps even after the next general elections, post-2023, we might be talking about the effects of this decision taken by the National Assembly on the amendment of the Electoral Act Bill. It's unfortunate because wherever you look across the globe, attempts are being made to improve the integrity of the electoral process. I listened to a lawmaker yesterday on a national television program say, even the countries in sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, that looked up to Nigeria when it came to election matters have gone way ahead of us. They've left us behind. We're still talking about, professors using touch and table rulers to try to look for figures after elections. We have elections, and 72 hours after, we are still yet to determine and announce who the winners are. And a comparison was made between Nigeria and India, where you have the second most populous nation in the world. I said exams. Elections are held, and in less than 48 hours, elections are coming to a close. That's a country of over 1 billion people. We're less than 250 million people, and we're still struggling with election results. I don't know if you've also seen what has made the round over the weekend since this has happened. So many exams in the country, even up to the WAEC level, Inec, ICANN, their results are being transmitted electronically. Why do we still need professors to come and be counting numbers on national television, wasting everybody's time, when we can actually deepen this process? The body in the eye of the storm here, the electoral body, Inec, says, we have the capacity to do this. So who's stopping them? Who's afraid of this?
Dr. Bati?
Well, for the avoidance of doubt, what are the issues at stake? One, the effort to ensure that the Electoral Act of Nigeria, Electoral Act Amendment Bill, as it is called now, 2020-2021, is reviewed to ensure that we are able to strengthen and deepen the credibility, the integrity, the transparency of the electoral process in Nigeria. Two, many Nigerians, including the Independent National Electoral Commission, have always argued that, look, the use of technology is important because technology can be used in line with best practices elsewhere, either in Africa or Europe or elsewhere, to ensure that transparency and to remove the tendency to want to be fraudulent during elections, to check electoral fraud, particularly at a time when we're yet to put in place a very strong framework for checking fraud. Now, ahead of the 2019 general elections, efforts were made. We did not succeed. The big excuse at the time was that the president refused to give his assent, first because of the closeness to the election, second because of contentious aspects of it with regard to freezing and what was proposed. Now, after the 2019 general elections, everybody said we have to sort this out. I think what happened in the National Assembly last week, despite the efforts of the present leadership of the Ninth Assembly to say that that matter will be addressed and the Electoral Act will be appropriately amended in time, ahead of the 2023 general elections and other elections, beginning with the Anambra election in November 6, 2021, when the first new delineation of polling units would be adopted. Why do I say that what happened last week was disgraceful? Because on the very important issue of electronic transmission of results, as addressed in clause 52, subsection 1 to 3 of the proposed bill, we saw a National Assembly that abandoned the path of wisdom and good reason. We saw the kind of scandalous behavior that the leadership and members of the National Assembly put up. As at this moment, even those who voted against transparency and accountability are beginning to lie in the face of the people, to say, oh, I didn't vote this way, I didn't vote that way, when indeed, the evidence is an overwhelming evidence. Last week, I made a point about the Speaker of the House of Representatives, how he decided to delegate. It was not the first time he would do that at critical moments. It was not the second time. And I said I was personally disappointed. I was also disappointed that about 28 lawmakers who were present in the House, in the Senate, at the time the matter was to be debated, conveniently disappeared. I had said that day that what we had was that they went to the convenience. I hope they don't have pepper soup joint inside the premises of the National Assembly, because should it be established that a member of that National Assembly went to take pepper soup at a time of such a matter of urgent national importance, such a person should be recalled. I was also particularly disappointed by the lawmakers from the southwest of Nigeria. The southwest of Nigeria is considered a place where progressive politics is the dominant mode of politics. So what has happened to the politics of progressive politics that southwest politicians usually talk about? Many of them also disappointed their people, and the way many of these politicians behaved, including members of the People's Democratic Party. You will recall that the People's Democratic Party had said, look, it was in support of electronic transmission of results. And we thought that there was a consensus among the various caucuses from the southwest to the southeast. But what then happened in the National Assembly? You found that many of them, just went the other way. So the question to ask, are there puppeteers in this process? Are there some hidden manipulators? And who are those puppeteers who are trying to, skew the electoral process, the electoral framework in Nigeria to serve purposes that we need to investigate? And whatever those purposes are, cannot be far away from an attempt to manipulate the electoral process in Nigeria against the people. Now, what the report that you quoted has pointed out is that, in fact, according to Inec, it is possible to do electronic transmission. The meeting between Inec and NCC in 2018 provided ample evidence that if there is direct transmission between the MNOs, that's the mobile network operators, and Inec, then, of course, it can be done. Well, we're told that you will need 3G network facility to be able to transmit electronically. Between 2021 and 2023, there's more than enough time to upgrade national telecom infrastructure to be able to achieve that objective. But I think that the Nigerian people should continue to express their views, and we hope that the president, when the bill as harmonized comes before him, will stand on the side of the Nigerian people and not on the side of puppeteers and hidden manipulators and spineless lawmakers who cannot stand on the side of truth and common sense.
Dr. Bati, very well said. Adesua, very well said too. We'll keep speaking about our country, and that's the duty of our country. We'll take a short break now.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotus Ojiri is here to give us Africa Business Update. Over to you, Rotus. Good morning.
Good morning, Adesua. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai.
Okay.
Good morning to all our viewers. We begin.
Don't MK Abiola on your mind.
Yes, of course. Whenever she leaves, she's always on our minds. But we begin with the floods. The NIHSA, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency, warned that what we saw on Friday, July the 16th, where Lagos was practically shut down with the torrential rain that fell, they said could actually get worse in September. They also said that the dam along the River Niger hasn't been developed. And that needs to be done. And so it was an advance warning, although they didn't give us any warning as to what we saw on Friday, which essentially just caused gridlock all over the city. Vehicles were destroyed because of the lack of drainage services. You saw, people wading through water. I mean, it was whenever we have heavy rain in this city, a mega city, right, which isn't supposed to happen, the entire city just gets shut down. So the NIHSA is giving advance warning that, look, what we saw on Friday, we could potentially see more of that in September. Now, you have to think about, polluting activities that clog the drainages. You have to think about especially on the island, the Lekki, the Ikoyi, VI area, compared to the mainland, the drainage system here. Then maybe even bring in climate change. I mean, look at what happened in Germany, Belgium, and parts of Europe, where the continuous warming of the climate leads to extra moisture in the atmosphere, which is, causing more intense rains. So, and again, there wasn't actually any heavy rain in Abuja, but I guess because of our coastal location here in Lagos, that's why we saw what we saw. But be that as it may, there needs to be more development done in terms of drainages, in terms of the dam, improvements to the dam, because this impacts a whole lot. I mean, all of you are witnesses as to what happened on Friday. We move from that to the telco sector, the telecommunications sector. Apparently, over the last 5 years, we've had $10 billion that has cost Nigeria $10 billion an FX import bill for the telecommunications sector. The Nigerian communications sector put out a national policy for the promotion of indigenous content in the Nigerian telco sector. Based on data that they got from company financials, from the telco players, they're looking at their estimates are they cost about $2 billion annually for a number of things. I mean, they broke this down into network software licensing, management fees, management services, a number of items, capital expenditure, CapEx. CapEx is about $750 million a year. Network software licensing, $250 million a year. Management fees, $800 million. Management services for tier 2 and 3, $157 million. Miscellaneous, $250 million. So Issa Pantami, Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, was saying that, look, Nigeria needs to develop these items locally. You need to localize CapEx. You need to localize your network software licensing and so on and so forth. Do we have the capacity to do that? That is, of course, the question when it comes to trying to reduce our import bill. Because, as you know, the telecommunications sector, 14% GDP growth in Q4 2020. I think it decelerated to 7% in Q1 2021, but it is still an important sector. However, Professor Akpan Ekpo, who is the chairman of the Foundation for Economic Research and Training, he did say that, look, as much as you talk up how much GDP growth we get from ICT, that is counterbalanced by what we're spending on FX in order to make sure that we've got the right equipment. So he says that, look, you cannot, and I talk about the ICT sector and what Obasanjo did back in 2000 and everything to liberate the sector, reform it, open it up, the jobs it has created, the call centers, when you go to fix your phone, the ecosystem. It's all been great. But what Professor Akpanekpo is saying is that, look, as great as it is, if we don't bring down the import bill for what the telecommunications sector needs, which he said, by the way, is 100% FX dependent, right? So if you don't bring that down, then you're negating the GDP growth from that particular sector. Finally, to South Africa, the riots, they're kind of receding now, but it's very interesting. The rand, the South African rand, has depreciated. It's weakened. It is understood that I believe Citigroup and Deutsche Bank and other investors have told traders to short the rand, to target it. So when you short a currency or you short a stock, you're essentially buying it, you borrow it, and then in anticipation that it is going to fall in value. So you borrow it at a particular cost. When it falls in value, you sell it back into the market, and you make the difference between what you bought and what you sold it at based on your bet that the currency or the stock or whatever asset you're shorting is going to fall. So you can see what the outcome is, and it's a capitalist society. Shorting is something that traders do around the world, but the impact is that it's going to, with so much pressure piling in on the rand due to the civil unrest and traders trying to profit off of it, it weakens the currency. So this is one of the sad outcomes of what we're seeing there. And in fact, it's even affecting other emerging market currencies, and that's our African business.
Okay, I mean, Rotus, you're spot on. How would it not happen? Why? Because there's insecurity in South Africa. And that's why, by extension, we keep calling for security in our own country. Why? Because once there's insecurity, the people will not want to trade the currency, the rand. People will not want to use the currency. And because of that, traders will not want to make good bargains, because it's not even a currency you want to sell at a point in time where most of the offices and spaza shops and the likes and economic benefiting institutions are shut down in South Africa because of violence. You can see the adverse effects of insecurity on any economy. Real quickly, to the telecom sector, this is the time to look back. This is the time to do backward, integration. This is the time to be able to look for possibilities of even manufacturing masts in this country. This is the time to be able to look for possibilities of manufacturing chips in this country. And you ask the question, Rotus, is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Rotus, you forget that a lot of the things China is doing today, China didn't do them until year 2000 when they joined the World Trade Organization, where they joined the grand trading body in the world.
Correct.
And they started providing those services to be able to come in. I mean, up to year 2000, you hardly had, radio equipment or telephone equipment out of China being made in China. But today, they are making all of those things. Why? Because they are developing, they are creating the ecosystem. And that's why this economy can grow. Okay. But most of the money is leaving due to capital flight because we've not developed our local industry.
I just want to talk about the floodings that we saw. You talked about warnings. Apart from the Hydrological Agency, we also have the Meteorological Agency in Nigeria that actually warned earlier in the year that would witness unprecedented rains in 2021. And the Hydrological Agency said at least 28 states, including the Federal Capital Territory, were at risk of flooding this year. So, Rotus, it's a problem for the government, for the people. And as we saw on Friday, it's a problem that went round. This is not just about government, it's about the people. What do we do about these warnings we are told about? Do we just close them aside? We go for climate conferences here and there. What do we do with those reports? I think we're beginning to bear the brunt of all our actions.
Well, in South Africa, I think what is happening in South Africa is a no-brainer. When you have increased political risk, your economy is likely to be affected. And markets where political risks are very high, investors are usually very careful with those countries, particularly developing countries that will be having elections within the next 2-3 years. And in the case of South Africa, it's a combination of a number of factors. One, the political risk. Second, the crisis of COVID-19, which has also worsened. And a combination of all of this, including unemployment rates and other economic issues. And then right at the center of that, you have this great division occasioned by the Jacob Zuma trial. But, the interesting part of it is that, yes, if, your market is failing, then of course other people will take advantage of it. That's what we're seeing with regard to South Africa, and that's the same thing we're seeing with regard to Chile, where the peso, has become very problematic. As for flooding, this looks like self-fulfilling prophecy, and there are many aspects to it. The first is our geographical location. Nigeria is downstream of the 8 countries in the Delta Basin. So at the end of the day, you find other countries. Water flows from there, including Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Chad, and all of these countries. And Cameroon and Nigeria, they've been having discussions. The Cameroonians have been saying every year they release water from the Lagdo Dam. Now, each time they release water from the Lagdo Dam, the last time in 2014, about 33 states in Nigeria were affected, resulting in drought, and we had to rely on our National Greens Reserve. If we don't take the necessary precautions, and it happens this year, then I don't know. With the National Greens Reserve depleted by over 10%, what are we going to fall back on? So there will be food supply crisis. The other problem is the coastal flooding, which you refer to. Okay, maybe it's climate change or the heavy rainfall, but we run a system here with regard to the environment where we're completely at the mercy of nature. And then you get the, familiar thing by October with Nigeria blaming Cameroon, that Cameroon should not have released water because they did not keep to their own part of the bargain. But of course, what have we also done to protect our own river basins here? The Onyon Dam and the Ogun River Basin and the other basins that we have.
All right, thank you so much, Rosus. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll go straight to Michael Wilson. Stay with us.
As you adjust to the new realities for operating your business and engaging with your customers, let us help you transform your business into a digital powerhouse capable of adapting and taking advantage of today's opportunities. With our best-in-class array of digital solutions, you can conduct your business, receive payments from your customers, and perform transactions quickly, safely, and conveniently, because we've got you covered with the right people, technology, and service offerings. Contact us today and let us take your business to its zenith. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Mr. Kaku like to Kaku. Every day must do Kaku. Yeah, if you want me go Kaku. If you want save me go Kaku. Every time he like to reason. Even free things he go by easy. Glow is there for you in every season. You don't have to over easy. Glow, better get that. Glow, oh that better. Glow, better get that. Glow, oh that better. Glow, better get that.
You don't have to be a Mr. Kaku when it comes to data. Get a Glow MiFi for 12,000 Naira and get up to 60 gigabytes data free.
So glad to have you back here on the morning show. Moving on to more business updates, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Hello, Michael.
Good morning. Yes, actually, so we've had floods, haven't we? And we're worried about climate change and so on. And the markets are worried about that too. But really, it's been a strange sort of start, a very quiet one, really. Worries about COVID, the new variants of COVID, and also the fact that OPEC Plus did agree, but has it thrown the oil market into confusion, or is the oil market a little bit firmer? I'll come on to that. As far as Asia markets are concerned, then the beginning of the week, starting rather, if I can put it like this, slightly soggily, to be honest, Nikkei's down about 1.5%, mainland Chinese down about 0.3%. Again, worried about what COVID's going to do to the global recovery story, and it looks as if doubts are being cast about that, as you would expect quite normally. Let's move on to OPEC Plus then. And what they've effectively agreed is a production increase, which is 400,000 barrels a day, month by month. So it's quite interesting. There will be more oil on the market, but separately, the International Energy Agency has talked about it being a relatively tight market. And I'm looking at prices. I'll come on to this. I will reiterate this towards the end of my report, that we could be looking at oil prices of $80 a barrel by the end of the year. Again, these are, I did say this earlier in the year. Now it's being slightly more confirmed by the IEA. And despite the fact that OPEC Plus managed to work through this unprecedented gridlock that they've had, if it gets to that kind of level, it's not necessarily all good for oil producing countries, because of course it gets higher, it is a commodity, and it's something gets more expensive, fewer people actually want it. Let me recap the United States for you. Interesting there, the usual inflation worries, all the markets there snapped basically a 3-week winning streak. Dow and S&P both fell. About inflation figures, and also on Friday, we saw an important inflation indicator from the University of Michigan, which is talking about 4.8% increase in inflation. So that's added to worries as well, on top of the official figures we got last week. However, retail sales are up in the United States as well, which is encouraging. And experts are looking at these inflationary figures and thinking that they are just at the moment looking at a relatively narrow range of inflationary products, so they feel as though it will be transitory. We will see about that. I'll add briefly about Zoom buying into cloud contact provider. It's doing that basically. It's a big deal, but it's buying into it because, of course, we're all going back to work, or at least lots of us are going back to work. So what does a company like Zoom do, which is ridden very high on us working from home? Well, it increases its offering, if you like. So it increases its business base. Now, companies are being reminded by the United States that if they're going to do business in Hong Kong, they need to be worried about the risks there. Sweeping regulation, electronic surveillance, and also the Chinese authorities taking possession, if necessary, of data and so on. This adds to the Biden administration actually placing sanctions on 7 Chinese officials as an additional warning. So these crackdowns and this trade war feeling and this megaphone diplomacy between the United States and China still continuing. It may be that Japan and South Korea, after years upon years of having very, very fraught relations with each other, may well be getting together in terms of some kind of diplomacy. Now, this fraught relationship goes right back to the end of the Second World War, in fact, during the Second World War, for all sorts of accusations between the various countries, which I won't bore you with right now. But it could be that the leaders of those 2 countries are going to get together at the end of the week. And I needn't tell you how important that could be for new trade deals, which might help both those countries and bolster up the Trans-Pacific trade deal, which we've been talking about quite recently. As far as Italy is concerned, here's the EU. And here is somebody who no doubt makes suits for all the gentlemen in the studio, Emilio Zenia, a big SPAC deal. Well, nearly perhaps. $3.2 billion of SPAC. Again, breaking this kind of trend of little independent but luxury brands in Europe actually folding into larger brands. Zenia is going to go its own way, but given it is going to be funded by a SPAC deal for its IPO. As far as the EU is concerned, I'm actually in southwestern France as we speak, and COVID demonstrations over the weekend, lots of people saying that health workers don't necessarily want to be vaccinated. I find that very difficult to believe. And also health passports as well to go into crowded places. At the same time, however, the vaccination rate in France has actually picked up, and we're now looking at 40% of the population with double jabs. Still behind the curve, but getting there. UK confusion again, of course. It's Freedom Day in the United Kingdom, the 19th of July. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has asked us all in the United Kingdom to employ social discipline in our freedom. In other words, not to hug and kiss and not to crowd and all the rest of it. This contrasts. I mean, if this were not a joke, if this were not such a serious matter, we'd be laughing at this. But in fact, 3 senior members of the cabinet, including the Prime Minister, are all now in self-isolation because of COVID. And also, it has to be said that consumer confidence has bucked up massively within the UK. So I think a lot of people are going to be out splashing the cash. As far as commodities are concerned, then almost finally, I did touch on this. We're looking at oil up 43% year on year, 60% since this time last year. Oil could be $80 by the end of 2021. And if it is, it's kind of come off very, very slightly this morning in Asian trade. It's about $73 a barrel. But if it gets up to 80, then we're going to see big problems, no doubt, for the oil market. It's not necessarily all good news as that commodity gets much more expensive. And as far as the week ahead is concerned, I would express it as being sort of fairly data light. So every day, it'll be a day trader's paradise, basically. We'll be looking at day-to-day inflationary indicators and all the rest of it. Nothing very big. And then big holidays in Southeast Asia and Japan as the week progresses. So market action, I suspect, will be very, very limited. It might be quite volatile, but it'll be limited. Volumes will be quite tight. That is the global view.
Well, Michael, will it be right to wish you a happy Freedom Day? Or to also say welcome to pandemic, which is the new phrase that I saw in the papers in the UK at the moment. But do you think that this decision by the Boris Johnson government to ease restrictions from today, do you think it's a gamble that will pay off, or it could be very risky? Particularly as some scientists are saying that the daily rate of infection could go up to about 20,000, and that by another month we could be talking about 200,000 cases per day in England alone. And Professor Neil Ferguson of the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies is very strong on that. But from what you have seen, do you think that it's risky? It's a very risky gamble. And then you talked about the U.S., the advisory that was given by the U.S. to the over 200 companies that are doing business or that have their headquarters in Hong Kong. Now, that advisory did not recommend withdrawal, that they should leave. But are we likely to see a situation whereby some of those companies may just have to make a choice and hedge their bets and leave Hong Kong?
Well, let's do with Hong Kong first of all. I mean, this is more governmental interference, basically, from the Biden administration into businesses. What they're saying is, look, it's risky. What they're seeing is, or they say they're seeing is, more Chinese clampdowns. So companies ought to be well aware of the risks that they're running if they wish to do business in Hong Kong. They need to protect their data. They need to protect their day-to-day businesses and so on. I mean, I would imagine that most companies that have taken the step to work in Hong Kong or to do business with Hong Kong are perfectly aware of all this risk. If they aren't, then there's something seriously wrong with the company. You usually find that business and commerce is ahead of what governments are doing. Governments say it for different reasons. People get on with their business. I'm not saying there aren't the risks. I'm sure there are. But Biden is quite keen to show that he is seeing, as a politician, that there are risks there, and it ties in with the anti-Chinese narrative that's still going on within the United States. As far as Freedom Day is concerned, of course it's a risk. It's a huge risk. I have no idea how it's going to pan out. If those infection rates rise, I'm sure they will. I don't know to what level, who knows? I wouldn't like to predict the future about that. But at some stage, we have to ask two questions about it. First of all, how serious are those cases? In other words, are they just a few sniffles and a few heavy colds, or are they quite serious? Are more people going to die? Are more people going to be hospitalized? I don't know. I simply do not know. Or we should be getting to a situation now where we look at COVID-19 and think, look, we've got these high vaccination rates. Do we learn to live with it? Do we learn to live with risk? Right. It's as simple as that. So, yes, I think you're absolutely right to point out the dangers. Of course, there's risk. There's risk everywhere.
Okay, real quickly, Michael. Dave Rasmussen, Deputy Governor, Bank of England, is saying and is pushing to have real conversations on inflation curbs, and the curbs will be in and around, interest rates. What do you say? The bank is holding it back. A fraction of the bank is saying, no, this is not the time to increase interest rates. But Dave is saying, this is the time. And when you look at the barometer, interest rates are the zeitgeist of the moment.
I think what I think will happen is that certainly there's no question this inflation is rising. We knew that from the start. It's a question of when central banks, including the Bank of England, make big moves like increasing interest rates. I think what we're going to see before then, and I'm no central banker, but I'm looking at the way that central banks sort of work, and they mustn't frighten the horses, they mustn't frighten the markets. I think what we'll see is more conversations about discussions about conversations about conversations about discussions. You see where I'm going with this. In other words, there will be little hints here and there about cutting back on the massive degree of money, of free money, of money being printed and pushed into the economy to save it. I think we're going to hear that from all central banks. We'll hear it from the Fed and we'll hear it from the Bank of England. I suspect that once the Fed moves, I think then other central banks, in terms of interest rates, then other central banks will do that too. But at the moment, we're still seeing markets looking through the spikes and saying longer term, what's the issue? Nothing to worry about today or indeed next week. I think that's where we are right now. So yes, of course, there are all these concerns, but central banks tend to move rather by nuance rather than massive interest rate moves. I mean, even if it's only 10 basis points, 0.1%, it's still big if interest rates are so low. I don't need to tell you that, obviously.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate you. Bonjour, and enjoy your time in France. All right, we'll go for a quick break. We'll come back and we'll talk to Adiso afterwards.
This isn't the first time we've had to show love to complete strangers. It isn't the first time we've had to help people in need. It isn't the first time we've worn uniforms, or the first time we've missed dinner parties or football games. It isn't the first time we've prayed for a miracle, but it may be the first time the world as we know it would change forever. At First Bank, with 126 years of consistent innovative banking under our belt, we have certainly seen a lot of firsts. That's why we've been at the forefront of the support of the COVID relief effort in Nigeria. And now, as we all try to get back to normal and see our loved ones again for the first time in a long time, and go back to the places we love and do the things we cherish, let's remember to put safety first, because we still have a lot more firsts in us, and we know you do too.
What does the path to success in your online business look like? What are the ingredients needed to succeed in selling online? Here's the obvious hint. You need the Flutterwave store. Here are the ingredients you need to succeed. Great product images, responsive layout, default payments integration, instant notifications, fast checkout, and even delivery. If you have no coding skills or knowledge, you're just as welcome, because the Flutterwave store doesn't require any. You can create a store for your business for free and start selling in 5 minutes or less. Step 1. Visit www.flutterwave.com/store and click on Set up your store for free. Step 2. Complete the sign-up form and click Get Started. Step 3. Check your email inbox for verification mail and click on the link. Select how you want to accept payments. Step 4. Click on Store in the side menu of your admin panel, fill in the details, and take it online. Step 5. Add products and start selling. Create your own online store today and receive payments from around the world. The Flutterwave store. Just sign up, list, and sell. It's that easy.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. Adeswa, over to you. Morning.
Thank you very much, Rufai. Well, COVID-19 has infected over 190 million people globally and killed more than 4 million others. 3.6 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered as well globally. Here in Nigeria, 203 new cases of COVID-19 were recorded in the last 24 hours. Lagos State posted the most numbers with 186. According to the NCDC, there was a backlog from Oyo State, which brought in 4 cases. And after reporting cases of the highly transmissible Delta variant and seeing a worrisome rise in infections, the federal government of Nigeria, through the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19, has put 6 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, on red alert. The PSC is urging people to curb gatherings and hold prayers outside mosques during this week's Muslim festival. The head of the Presidential Steering Committee on the virus, Boss Mustafa, said Lagos, Oyo, Rivers, Kaduna, Kano, Plateau states, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, had been placed on the red alert as preventative measures against the pandemic. It is not clear at the moment what the red alert level would translate to in all the states, but we do hear reports that in the Federal Capital Territory, recreational centers have been shut. Over to the UK, moments ago, Michael Wilson touched on this. The Prime Minister urging the public to be cautious as the country relaxes almost all remaining COVID-19 restrictions despite a surge in infections. But what Michael didn't mention was that there was a controversy practically forcing the Prime Minister, the Finance Secretary, to isolation. Both men had initially tried to avoid isolation by saying that they were part of a pilot scheme program. This, of course, prompted an outcry from members of the public and backbench Conservative MPs, backlash from them as well. But Downing Street is now saying that they won't be part of the study. This study actually allows people to work in their offices and only isolate when they are not at their jobs. To Japan now, Tokyo to be precise, 2 South African soccer players have become the first athletes inside the Olympic Village to test positive for COVID-19, the topic with the Tokyo Games opening in just 5 days. The South African Olympic Committee confirmed that 3 cases have been recorded in its soccer delegation at the village, 2 players and a video analyst. There have been reported positive cases among athletes and officials at the Olympic, at the Olympics ahead of the opening, but none had been recorded in the Games Village until now. So these are the first cases inside the village.
Well, I mean, it's not just those South Africans, 4 of them actually. There's one other official who also tested positive. So far, about 10 cases of infection have been reported ahead of the Olympics, which will begin on Friday. And there's also a report about a Nigerian official who has not been named, who also tested positive. And this is a big fear about, the Tokyo Olympics, expressed by persons who have been protesting. In fact, as recently as yesterday, there were 1,000 persons, in a part of Tokyo protesting that to do the Olympics will be unforgivable, because the rate of infection is likely to go up. Even if the authorities have said that there will be restrictions in place from now till August 22. The Olympics will end on August 8. And the chairman of the organizing committee says that they are ready in case there is an escalation in the infection rates. But, well, Japan, the government of Japan should be ready to be to receive the appropriate blame should there be any kind of, community spread, either in Tokyo, the Games Village, or in the 3 other prefectures where the games are taking place. You refer to the report by the Presidential Steering Committee, speaking through Boss Mustafa, who is the head of that team. And we're told that, is it 6 states?
Yes.
In Nigeria and the Federal Capital Territory have been put on red alert because of the fear of, the spread of the Delta variant in Nigeria. Well, what does this red alert, what does it constitute? Because it would seem to me that, in fact, it's the entire country itself, not just 6 states, that should be put on red alert. Nigerians, I mean, if you follow what goes on Instagram, continue to hold big parties, every weekend, every day of the week, without any regard for social distancing. In many of these public gatherings, often held indoors, people don't even bother to use their masks. There was a big event, in a place called Oba in Anambra State over the weekend, where a burial became a festival, and people were just mixing with each other with reckless abandon. And the question to ask the Presidential Steering Committee is that what efforts are being made to enforce some of those guidelines that government offered? I know it's only in Lagos State that the government has said, look, if you violate those restrictions, those non-pharmaceutical restrictions, then you will be sanctioned. But how many people have actually been sanctioned and taken to task under the public health regulations? Because generally across Nigeria, it's as if there's COVID fatigue. It's like there is a crisis of COVID fatigue. Apart from COVID fatigue, there also seems to be some assumption that the COVID is over, or that we are all generally immune to COVID-19. As for the UK, as Mr. Wilson pointed out, yes, we'll see how that goes. But what has happened is that as a result of public pressure, Boris Johnson and the Health Secretary and the Chancellor could not say they will not isolate. It means that nobody is above the law. This was the point made by the opposition when there was that attempt by the Chancellor and the Prime Minister to sidestep the guidelines that have been put in place by the government.
I mean, for me, the sad story was the one that came out of, I think, a university in Jos.
Okay.
That was talking about people now resorting to using various herbs that is not, that has not gone through the screening process of NAFDAC and the likes. And I think we should be very careful in a time like this. Yeah, there are people concocting all sorts, but please, we should go through the normal approval. That is what is really important. And like Dr. Basi was saying, I think a lot of Nigerians have forgotten about COVID, and it's a sad reality. And we need to remind them that COVID-19 is real and it's still here. And I think we're going to have a lot of super spreader events over this weekend, this Salah weekend. In fact, it has started already. You'll be shocked. Some states have put measures in place, like most of the parks are shut in Abuja and some other parts, but people don't care. And you'll be amazed what happens. And it's not only in Nigeria, it's all over the world. So what happened over the weekend in Silverstone? Over 160,000 people go watch Formula One. I didn't see one face mask being worn. It was free for all. It was free for all.
Probably was in anticipation of Freedom Day.
Freedom Day, but you're shocked and the cases are going up. Yeah. So those are the conversations we need to have critically, that, you see, nobody wants to be in this position. We all have fatigue, but we can't wait for this disease to be over. But before it's over, let us take the necessary precaution and let leadership lead the way. It's really important because it is what the leadership says that the people will do.
Indeed, especially because we don't have enough vaccines to go around just yet. Yeah. And of course, the highly transmissible Delta variant.
Well, for the religious festival this week, people have been advised to pray in neighborhood mosques and not try to go to prayer grounds. I don't know how government is going to enforce that, because people will raise questions about religious freedom. And what we have seen in India with the Kumbh Mela, and in the US with the 4th of July, and also even in Europe with regard to Euro 2020, is that once people bunch together in large numbers, you really cannot prevent the spread of the virus.